The two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. That man was Samuel Clemens, or better known as Mark Twain, who is also one of the most renowned writers in American history. Clemens created many famous quotes that people have used to get a laugh or in other cases to learn a valuable life lesson. He paved his own trail to fame with his many stories of adventure and travel. Without those stories, American folklore would not be the same. William Faulkner, another famous writer, once said that Clemens was the father of American literature. Samuel Clemens has sculpted a way for us to appreciate the simple things in life, and he managed to fit that into compelling stories that have captivated the attention of readers around the world for generations. My name is Michael, and I'm going to enlighten y'all on one of the most well-known authors in American history. The majority of Mark Twain's most famous works come from his childhood experiences growing up in rural Missouri. On November 30th, 1835, Samuel Clemens was born in a small town called Florida, Missouri. He was one of 7 siblings raised by John and Jane Clemens. At an early age, Samuel and his family moved to Hannibal, Missouri. It's like a small port town along the Mississippi River. Samuel's mother recounted how he was a very sickly child growing up, and that may have played a part in his mischievous behavior. John Clemens, his father, struggled to make ends meet and constantly worried about his financial situations, which led to Samuel to find jobs to help pull his weight around the house. One job that stood out for Samuel was his career working on a riverboat going up and down the Mississippi River. It all came to a halt, though, when the Civil War broke out in 1861, leaving him with no option but to join his friends in a small Confederate force that soon disbanded. But after that, he fled to the Nevada Territory with his brother to escape the war. And that is where his focus for literature took a major leap, and he started to create stories from his life beyond that point. Mark Twain's love for adventure drove his passion for writing, leading to many successful stories. It is said that at first he was ashamed to pursue his journey of writing because it was not a very manly occupation that was customary for that time period. Most of his stories contain scenes that he experienced growing up on the Mississippi River, and several fictional characters were based on real people that Mark Twain met throughout his life. His works gained credibility for the first time when his novel of Tom Sawyer sold out in 1876. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer is a book about a young boy growing up on the Mississippi River, and it allows the reader to tag along on all of his many journeys. He gained even more fame when he produced a sequel to that book, and that was a bestseller called Huckleberry Finn. These are both some of his most famous novels to date and are still on the charts as being some of the best-selling books in American history. Twain was also credited with many famous novelists for his literary pieces that drew national attention. Ernest Hemingway once wrote that all American literature comes from his single book by Mark Twain called Huckleberry Finn. Towards the end of his life, it is noted that Samuel Clemens became depressed and longed for happiness. Clemens' last years have been described as his bad mood period. Just like his father, Clemens managed his finances very poorly, leaving him in bonds, and as an older man, he desperately tried to dig his way out of that hole with more pieces of literature. This debt and the burden of his wife and 3 kids passing away really took a toll on Clemens. And on April 21st, 1910, Samuel Clemens did die from a heart attack at the age of 74. But with all that being said, Mark Twain's legacy lives on through the minds and hearts of so many people. He's in those clever stories about Huckleberry Finn that your grandparents tell you after a good supper. He lives on through the magnificent pictures that are depicted of the mighty Mississippi, and in life adventures resurface in many memorable bedtime stories that help us think of good times. So if you're ever traveling through the backwoods of rural Missouri, or trekking up the vast plains of Nevada, or even visiting the vibrant city of New Orleans, take a second to remember a man who showed us that there's a beautiful world just waiting for us to adventure and also make memories that will last a lifetime.